Well, good evening. Thank you so much for being here. I am beyond thrilled to pull together our first meeting of a task force on student mental health. My name is Erica Berkeley. I'm a Forest Hills mom and psychologist at UC. Thank you for those of you that attended the talk last night and the excellent questions and comments that we received. For the task force, thinking about what is this, what is the mission? It is really about what we make it. So my vision to start is that it's action oriented, right? And so what I mean by that is coming with every single meeting, having a plan of what we're going to put in place for our young people, especially related to mental health and mental health services. Another broad goal is to really partner with Forest Hill School District and essentially coming alongside them, hopefully be invited at the table to talk about mental health services that can be offered for our young people, and continuing to kind of an approach of like all hands on deck. We know that urgency is there in general. Our young people are in a mental health crisis. We know that that's the case. And then our district, of course, is reeling from the loss of 2 of our loved ones. And so this group is about action. It's about making things happen, but doing so in a way where we come together to make that happen. So as part of this, yes, please.
Admit those people.
Oh, yes, thank you. Yes, thank you so much. Yes, it's fantastic. It's so appreciated. So my role is really just to help pull these things together or be a start to this. We have several students here in the room with us. I am so excited to have you guys here. In my mind, you are the voice of this group, and you're going to give us so much knowledge feedback in terms of how we're going to reach our young people and connect them with services. So thank you for investing your time and being here. For those of you that are on Zoom online, if you would like to, you can turn your video on. I have it displayed where we can see all of you here in the meeting. And so it can be helpful just to see faces and who you are as we have this group discussion. To kick us off as well, kind of action items for today's meeting. Ideally, my 2 cents, my thoughts, which will open up to the group, are to pull together maybe a few key resources that we can disseminate to our students, our young people, that they can access, especially during the break in general, of course, but also during the break. And then also to disseminate information about a QPR training that is being held specifically for our parents and adults in the district, question, persuade, refer. And on that note, I'm going to introduce my colleagues from 1 and 5 to talk to you a little bit more about that organization, what they do, and the QPR training. And then we'll follow that up in the agenda with more opening up to the group, talking about what action items you all suggest that we take on, and that we can put on our agenda both short-term and long-term. All right, so I'm welcome up our ladies from 1 and 5.
This is what I actually look like. Yeah, we'll so we can actually hear us.
Yeah.
So I'm Nancy Eigelmiller, and I'm the executive director of 1 and 5. And I know some people in the audience here. We are a nonprofit here in Cincinnati that works to do prevention work in schools. So when we go into a school, what we do is we do a climate survey with the students, the staff, and the parents, really to understand that culture. And then we look at that data, and then we start to put programs into place. And we say that we do everything from mindfulness to suicide screens and everything in between. And we are doing that training with students, staff, and parents. There's some foundational programs that we recommend. We recommend the Adapt for Life. That's from Children's Hospital. That is a 4-day, very intensive program that is for students, usually in 8th or 9th grade. And then we also like to have the entire staff educated with QPR. Erin will talk about that in a minute. But we are working with about 100 schools in Cincinnati. Everything we do is evidence-based. It's really important to us that we are looking at the research. We work with some other organizations. MindPeace is here, and hopefully Susan can talk to us a little bit about that today. But we really think that there should be a therapist in the buildings, that we're doing the prevention work, and then there are therapists in the buildings who are doing that intervention work. I can talk a whole lot more, but I probably shouldn't talk a whole lot more right now. So I'll let Erin talk about QPR.
Yeah, so QPR is, as Erica said, question, persuade, refer. And if you, in my mind, think about suicide prevention work on a spectrum of like really preventative in terms of how do we manage and cope and deal with the hard things that happen in life. And then how do we intervene in a crisis moment? QPR is more that intervention piece. So kind of thinking about that as a spectrum. And so when Nancy's talking about doing everything from mindfulness to those screeners, that's more that intervention component. So we really work on that spectrum. So QPR is going to be more looking at signs, symptoms, which is why we really encourage parents to be part of that. Some of our young people could really be activated in ways that we don't want, especially as they're navigating their grief journey. And we want to wrap them with those grief supports as well. But the QPR is you're invited. We will also include other resources about connecting with your young people in terms of navigating that grief loss journey, and some other resources. And then also, what are the things we do? We'll talk about that just a little bit. What are the things that we can do to take care of ourselves as best we can? And then dive into the QPR, the question, persuade, refer, evidence-based program of what are the risk factors, what are those warning signs, and what does that care look like here in Cincinnati? What are the outlets we can go to when we need to intervene? So I don't want to use the word excited, we're grateful for the opportunity to provide this training to the community. It was in person because we want to have a mental health provider in the room for those that might need that extra support. I have navigated a suicidal crisis two times, one without training and one with, and the training is really, really helpful. And so I encourage anyone to participate. If the 2 days are full, we will continue to roll out more opportunities as we move through the beginning of next year as well, and into the doesn't matter what year it is, 2022. And so that is us. So thank you for being here. Thank you for being here. And we look forward to meeting more of you in person. Oh, such a great question, Erica. How do you sign up? There's a link. I don't remember the answer to this question because that's outside my pay grade.
No,
there's a link.
There is a link that's been shared by the foundation. It was shared this afternoon.
Okay.
It's also on the, we have a QR code, and it's also on the Anderson Collaborative Facebook page that there's a link in there as well.
And then our 1 in 5 just community training options. I knew the answer to that one. Right, the general 1 in 5 community that we do twice a month that are virtual are on our website at 1in5.org.
Under events, you can find them. Yes.
Good thing she's here. Awesome. Thank you.
All right.
Would you guys like to introduce MindPeace?
Sure. So Susan, we'll just put you on the spot. We'll have you come up here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Susan Shelton, the Executive Director of MindPeace. And first, I just want to extend my sympathy to the community. My sister lives in Anderson, and my 3 nieces all went to Anderson High School. I think there's a couple Turpin grads here are like, no, but I'm just teasing. But I know you guys are going through a lot, so I wanted to be here in person to offer my support and our organization's support. We're a nonprofit and work quite a bit in collaboration with 1 in 5. And our mission is to build a system of care for kids in Greater Cincinnati. We have been at this for about 16 years, building that system. And a key component of the system of care for kids from prevention all the way through the highest level of treatment, which would be hospitalization, is school-based mental health services. So MindPeace has a collaboration of 22 school districts across Greater Cincinnati with now 190 schools who all are linked together as part of one single community to deal with a lot of these issues that you guys are talking about. And so I would, first invite the Forest Hills community to become part of this bigger collaboration, because as you all have said, it's a big issue, it's a big problem, and it's something that we can do together. So there's already been quite a bit of work on, oh, there's a hand coming in here.
So sorry.
Sorry, there's a lot of work happening in our greater, the bigger community around issues that kids are facing. And, it would be great for the community, your community, to be part of it. We learn from each other, and we use evidence-based practices, and we, look at different things like what happens with kids in high-performing, districts like Forest Hills, and the anxiety and depression that we're seeing increases of, and how can we get, kind of interventions in place to address those specific problems, or trauma, the wonderful, workshop that we had with Erica on trauma, but how do we really, kind of put trauma-informed practices into place, and what does that look like? And so we can learn from each other. So I just wanted to extend that invitation for your community to become part of the larger community, so we don't reinvent the wheel. I think there's a lot, that we could all learn together. The other thing is, just so you guys know, the MindPeace website, we were asked by Children's Hospital to have the database of all the mental health providers in Greater Cincinnati, to keep that updated and clean. And then people at our office work with families one-on-one to connect them to care. And so if you don't want, if you need services that look different, or you have an unusual circumstance with your family financially, or whatever roadblocks, we've got that database so that kids can get in care now. And so that, you've got resources and someone to talk to about this, specific situation. The other thing we have is during the break, I think it would, be great to have some resources around how can you thrive during the break versus, be at risk and sad and lonely and maybe depressed. So we've got some of those resources on our website, and maybe I can send them to Erica to their ideas for kids and also teens and parents. And then lastly, we have virtual MindPeace rooms on our website. So there are calming activities that are really, they mirror a MindPeace room, which are rooms in schools where kids can learn to calm their brain and can learn, just really great tips on how you de-escalate when you're feeling that amazing, burden of stress. So the virtual MindPeace rooms are on the website for anyone. So I just really appreciate you all just activating yourselves. It's really inspiring. And however MindPeace can help you all, we're here for you. So I'll leave you at that. Is that okay? Okay. So, so I don't know, am I turning it over to you, Erica?
Yeah,
Sorry. Okay. I hope I get to see everybody in person soon too.
All right, so I don't know about you all, but I just got so much more hopeful about our landscape, how many amazing programs are in place and already ready to go to help our community come alongside and partner with our school district to provide as many evidence-based services as we can and that our students deserve. With the 1 in 5 training, we have a QPR code that I will post on the website, this website for the task force for Students for Mental Health, and then we can also email it out as well. Please consider signing up for that. I will be present as a mental health professional on site during that training as well. And then with MindPeace, so we heard many suggestions and I think helpful resources that are already in place from those two organizations, 1 in 5 and MindPeace. I wanted to draw it out to the group to have us talk about, kind of share or brainstorm what sort of things we want to prioritize action-wise. There's a task force for student mental health. And I wanted to, if our young people are open to it, start with asking them if they had anything to share with the group or any ideas in particular of what they're looking for, would need more of in terms of mental health resources. So I will do that first. And if there are students online, please, if you can just let us know or kind of wave or unmute yourself so we can include you in this part of the agenda. Any students? Do you guys want to, is there anything, any ideas you have? Things you want to say? No? That's okay. That's all right. So just touch base with our students. And of course, you guys, if you think of anything as we go through the talk, please just voice your opinions. It's a very safe place. Yeah, right? That's a great idea. Yeah. Yeah. Or text us questions that they might have. So I'm going to turn this over to our larger group for more of a group-based discussion. I might help navigate that at times, so please bear with me. And then I'm going to turn the camera towards our group here too as well. So looking at the room, opening that group discussion. So we'll start that now. If anybody online wants to say anything, of course, unmute your mic, please, before you start speaking. Anyone in here want to kick us off? Sure, it's very open-ended. So if you have thoughts on action items that you'd want this group to tackle in terms of thinking about increasing mental health services for our kids, and then also more broadly, it's to share, it's an open forum. So if you have concerns, certain emotions, kind of thoughts that you have that you want to share with the group as well and have acknowledged, we can do that too. Not that I know of. That's a great question. I'm not sure. Do we have any district representation in the room? We don't have any district members that I'm aware of. I did invite them to the meeting, but I do not. If there is a district member here, if you could please just let us know.
I'm on your lead, but
Okay.
I'm also a parent.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
And I've been working
Absolutely. Yeah. Is that helpful to know? Okay. Yep. We have a question. Do we know what are the differences between QPR and mental health first aid? Yeah. Do you want to come up here? Yeah, so they can hear you online too.
I didn't know I was going to be talking so much. I would have put makeup on.
You're fine. You look great.
Good thing I had my hair done the other day. It held. Yeah. So mental health first aid is a much longer training. I believe it's about 8 hours when I did it. And it's really comprehensive as well. QPR, so mental health first aid will really dive into different mental illnesses and the symptoms of each of those. And then they have an acronym as well for how to identify that someone needs help and then get them to that help. But I'll be honest, I don't remember the acronym because it's a little bit longer. No offense to mental health first aid, I just have a bad memory. But so QPR is much more just looking at the risk factors for maybe that crisis moment or that someone's not doing well. Maybe you don't know why. So it's a shorter training. It's 2 hours. And so you'll just be aware of risk factors for something not right and then getting them to the help that they need. So it's a simpler acronym for me, so QPR. And we also really recommend it for schools. And I know most of the Forest Hills teachers have already been trained on QPR as well. So that's the difference, if that helps.
One of the things that I would say is that QPR is about 2 hours, and we really can get an entire staff trained pretty easily by doing QPR. With mental health first aid, it's 8 hours. I think that you would have a very difficult time getting the entire staff trained to do it that way.
Mm-hmm. Hopefully we're not making you guys dizzy. If you all weren't able to hear that, QPR training is 2 hours. So it's a lot easier to implement and train versus another difference is mental health. First aid is 8 hours, which then requires more commitment and a longer amount of time. Another question is, do we know what specific interventions are in place in the schools currently? Do you want to take this, Wendy?
Hello, I'm Wendy Strickler, and I am excited to be here and excited to figure out how we can all work together around this piece, because I do know we are grieving as a community, and it is overwhelming to try to figure out what the missing pieces of this puzzle are. And I guess that's what I wanted to just have the opportunity to share a little bit, is that there are a lot of puzzle pieces in place, and clearly we have not figured this out, right? I mean, clearly there is still an issue. So there is absolutely a need to figure out how to come together and look at what are we already doing, what needs strengthened about it, how is it being perceived? I mean, I think that's really important from a student perspective, and then where are there gaps? So I think that's a really important question to ask. And as I was thinking about it, I was kind of trying to draw out the continuum from a school district perspective. And I can speak to this because for 8 years I worked as the district lead psychologist. So a lot of my work was intertwined with these pieces. So very much to the point of 1 and 5, which I fully agree with, there is a huge continuum. And it starts with prevention work. And so for at least 5 years, probably longer, I don't know the exact dates in the district, there has been a lot of work with teachers around teacher professional learning and professional development. And that has absolutely included QPR, which, if I remember correctly, and please don't quote me on this, but I believe was mandated for middle and secondary teachers and optional for elementary teachers, right? So a lot of teachers in the district have gone through QPR, this training in question, persuade, refer, to try to help give teachers better understanding, better knowledge, better strategies. Along with those pieces, there have been a lot of work done around relationship building with kids and knowing our kids better. That's everything from beginning of their professional learning. 1 year was called Nurturing Hearts and Minds, where a lot of the options were around better understanding our students. And that's also the evolution of the care work that I know is in question, but was really about one more way to try to better understand our students and the diverse needs that they bring to the table. Those differences including mental wellness and mental health needs. So from a continuum, starting with prevention, those pieces were all in place in different ways. Along the continuum of intervention, there's the Panorama survey, which I know has also been in question, but for several years in the district, there's been some version of a social emotional school connection survey, the purpose of which is to look to the research, again, I love the evidence base, around how do we know we're helping our kids develop resilience? How do we know who's well connected with school, who feels supported in school by teachers, by peers, who feels connected? Because those are all resilience factors that help support our kids. And so gathering that information is just one more social safety net in terms of trying to access our kids and help them share with us, where are you and what do you need from us? As well, there are different social emotional development programs. There's been zones of regulation across some schools, second step. Those are not consistent. So full acknowledgement from an elementary perspective that those are all focused around emotional regulation, understanding your emotions, how you deal with them, not right or wrong, just what they are, and coping pieces, as well as how to get along. But there's probably some inconsistency there. There's also then Hope Squad, who's just, was brought in as another piece of the puzzle. And it broke my heart at the board meeting to hear student next perspective on Hope Squad. And I think it has evolved more since his time at Anderson, but that's not to mean we don't need to speak to an understanding of where does it fit in the puzzle of supports, right? It's what are adults doing, what are families doing, what's the school doing, what's the system doing, what are other students doing? How do we all come together in a supportive way? There is positive behavior intervention support, so an overall framework of making sure kids understand the systems that are in place for supports, plus counselors, school psychologists, child-focused therapists in, I believe, about every building, all the way to the other end of that continuum, which is TSIP, which is the crisis teams available across every building. So I share all that just to say there has been a lot of proactive work done around this, and there is not a single person in our school system who is not grieving around not having figured out all of the pieces of this puzzle. We haven't. There are missing pieces there, but please start knowing there is a strong foundation on which we need to build, and let's figure out what the missing pieces of that foundation are. What are the gaps, and how do we strengthen what's already in place? Thanks for asking the question.
So we have a few questions coming in from
Okay, yes. Sure, do you mind coming forward? I know it's awkward to speak into and then there's people behind you. It's a weird setup.
A lot of questions.
It is, yes.
So my name is Victoria Oakley. I'm here on behalf of a community member. I'm an alumni and I'm a coach in the district, but I'm also a social worker in another school district. So I just know in the 9 years that I've been coaching, there's been such, like the last 2 or 3 years, there's been such an uptick in like aggressive mental health cases just in my small little pod of kids that I coach. And so in like having conversations with them, there's just such a desire to be perfect in this school district. They want to go to Ivy League schools, and there's just such a push to go to like huge D1 schools, and they take all these AP classes. And I was in high school, 11 years ago, I graduated. AP classes were not what they are now. It's just crazy to me that there's no other options basically other than AP. These kids have 5.0 GPAs, and then they try to do all these extracurricular activities so that they can go to all of these huge schools, which I understand for ourselves is just, it's such a wonderful district, and it's, a great opportunity, and people look highly upon that kind of stuff. But it's also the desire to be perfect is pushing these kids over the edge. Like I can give you an example. My brother, as stupid as this sounds, had perfect attendance from 6th grade all the way through 12th grade. The first day of school, his 12th grade year, my sister had her funeral, so he missed the first day of school. Several people in this room attended, but they did not give him his perfect attendance award because he missed 1 day of school for an excused absence. That to me is very bizarre. I get it, it wasn't perfect, but nobody can be perfect, especially like in an unforeseen circumstance. So I noticed Ms. Kimball yesterday, she and I texted a little bit, received an attendance letter for Ben when he was at like doctor's appointments and those kinds of things. And for me as a social worker, that's part of my job, is working with kids who aren't coming to school and trying to plan together with families and the school and the community and figure out what we can do to get them back on track in school. And I think that's kind of the piece that's missing. There's, things out in the community, there's things that are happening in school, there's things that are happening in family, but all three necessarily aren't working together. I have a lot of notes, I'm so sorry.
It's an excellent point. Yeah, and I think a huge mission for this task force is to bring those voices together with a common goal, and then to put that into, okay, how do we tangibly then organize that with some of the strong resources we already have in place with 1 in 5 and MindPeace.
And so, like with MindPeace, we have a MindPeace room at my school. There's no, like she said that when she was talking to kids, they're eating lunch in the bathroom. And nobody wants to eat lunch in the bathroom. That is going to take your mental health even further down than where it already is. Like if we had safe spaces that kids could go to. So I just challenge schools for the PBIS. Yes, those are in place. The expectations are being taught. But we have also pushed ourselves to send out surveys, like the Panorama survey identifies kids who are connected with schools, but doesn't necessarily identify which adults in the building they are connected to. So if you could send out some type of Google form, Google survey, what about school do you like? What things would you like to change? Who do you feel connected in the building, and why do those people support you? Because I think that's important. That way kids, I even make them write it down like on a note card or in their phone, That way, if you know you're having a tough day, you just know who in the building you can look at and who at home you can look at for guidance. I'm glad to hear that we're QPR training staff, but also Susan and I were just talking about signs of suicide. I don't think that kids necessarily talk about it enough, and I think that there's more kids in the buildings than we could even think of that have had suicidal ideation. So to make them fill it out on a piece of paper and be like, okay, yes, in the past 6 months, in the past year, I have had these, and connect them again to an adult. And that brings us back to the availability of school counselors, school psychologists, child focus, because I know it's not so easy. But they would check in with them. And also, what is the protocol for a student who is feeling suicidal at school? If you are having an anxiety attack, who do you go to? Is it the school counselor? Because when I've talked to my kids, they have said that they just go to their school counselors for college readiness and things like that. So who do you go to? Are they Columbia trained? Are they able to have those tough conversations and assess students whether they need to be sent to mobile crisis or sent to children's? Are we working in collaboration with we can get trained for those types of things? And then working on 3 E's. I don't know if you guys do 3 E's in Forest Hills: employment, enlistment, or enrollment. So talking about other options outside of just college. Doing more job fairs, doing things with trade schools. We had people that went to Diamond Oaks, and I didn't even know they existed. It's kind of just like shunned. But they came to graduation and we were like, hey, welcome to graduation. It shouldn't be like that. They should be part of the school still, even if you choose to do something post-secondary. But putting those options out there. I understand the graduation rate's like 99%, and most of those kids go to college, which is awesome. But just throwing those things out there for people who aren't necessarily ready for college.
Thank you.
Sorry,
That was fantastic. And continuing to keep the momentum going. So if there are people online that want to contribute, they can. I will try my best to review some of the comments and look for questions too.
Hey, Erica, it's Amy Miller. We're supposed to meet at some point in person. Hi, everybody. I can't really tell who's in the room. Hi. So I am a current Forest Hills parent. I've got a junior, and then I have a 2021 Anderson graduate as well, who did the opted not to go to college to pursue playing and teaching golf professionally. Which is a fantastic career to go into. I will say, number one, I love the idea of not college being for everybody options. The reality is the district that we live in, the expectation is that our kids go to college. So, and I have talked about this. We have 7,500 kids in the district, and absolutely we need to get them resources. How do we get the other 40,000 people that live in our district to buy into what we're trying to do with those 7,500 kids? Because if they walk out of the building and the, guy at Kroger doesn't, or their next door neighbor or whatever doesn't realize what we're trying to do and they don't get it, we're sort of spinning our wheels by just doing it inside the walls of 9 buildings. Like, I guess my question is, and how do we change how do we take what we're trying to do within our school buildings and disseminate it into our community? Because I think we've got great stuff happening in our schools, but if you talk to, a next door neighbor, they're like, oh, your kid didn't go to college. Well, no, he didn't. And this is, but that should be an okay thing. And so I guess my initial question that I just wanted to, Erica, you were asking, like, what are some tasks that we need to follow up with, is how do we disseminate what we are doing in our buildings beyond our buildings? Like, how do we let people in our community know there are QPR trainings? because it's great for us parents to have it. But if, if there's an employer, if your kid works at Arthur's and there's a manager at Arthur's that knows about QPR training and has done QPR training and can see that one of their employees is struggling, like that's an intervention space. So, I would like for us, in addition to things that we can do in school, and I've got some like very simple ideas that we can do in school, but one of them being, why do we have perfect attendance awards? Because if we want kids to take care of themselves, why would we force them to go to school? But in that same vein, like, how do we share with the community, these are resources available, these are options available. If you see someone struggling, here's how you can get them help, that sort of stuff. Because there's, 7,500 of them, 70% of people in our school district do not have kids in our schools. So to train 30% is fabulous. But if you've got 70% of your community that doesn't know that A, there's a crisis, and B, how they can be a part of solving that crisis, it just feels like a miss.
Thank you, Amy. So many amazing points, right? To involve the community and do really wraparound support for our young people. I love thinking about, if their employer is QPR trained and getting some momentum behind that. Thank you so much for sharing that. There is a question. Do we know how many therapists the district actually has in it currently, and if they are contracted or hired directly within? Oh, I don't know what I just did. I lost track of that question. Oh, sorry. Okay, so the question is, I apologize. Do we know how many therapists the district actually has in it currently, and if they are contracted or hired directly within the district? Of course. So just to say, we don't have Forest Hill School District representation tonight, which we would have loved to have, and we hope to have in the future. So these are some of maybe guesses or educated guesses.
Yeah. So, well, I was going to say child focus is contracted. They're contracted. I believe they're close to one in every building, but I don't think every day. They're not. They're not. There's one that's shared between Summit and Sherwood. Okay, so there's somebody in every building, but maybe not every day. Not every day. They're shared. I have one child in child focus. Got it. And they have actually sent us the children multiple times with them as an elementary school for evaluation. But they were able to catch it. That was when he was in one of the elementaries that had one there all the time. Got it. So if he was having a crisis, he could go to her anytime, and he knew that. But now that he's in a building that has a shared child focus counselor, that person is not always available to my students. Thank you for clarifying. I think I bet there's access in every building, but you're right, I don't think it's full time. Well, and they are not given information from the school, which is kind of a problem when we go into like 504 meetings and stuff to address our children. Our child focused therapist was not even aware that my child had a 504 because the school does not involve them in those conversations. And that would be very helpful to have the school looped in and involved as long as parental permission is given. Yeah, I was going to say that's got to be a permission. I've had to invite our counselor myself to our meetings so that they could be in the loop on my students' plans and accommodations. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
There are also, I believe 9 psychologists and 12 counselors, roughly, who are in the buildings as well. So there are supports, but again, we look at the number of students, and to your point, the number of students who are demonstrating significant needs right now. It doesn't feel like enough as a parent, I say that. But I don't think that's on the school for like trying. I just think that's the reality of where we are right now. If I could add to, so if
do you want to come forward? What? And so far, what's been said is that there a child focus sponsors counselors, but that they are one parent shared that at least at the elementary school level, they're shared days, so they're not there necessarily full time. And when her child did have a child focused counselor there full time, they did catch that the child did need to follow up and were referred to children's. And so we're continuing that discussion right now.
So I just wanted to add that if Forest Hills would decide to become part of the MindPeace community, one of the benefits is we work with the lead mental health partner and the school to help, kind of improve the partnership over time. The cool thing is Child Focus is already a partner of MindPeace's, and they can provide really some excellent work, and love working with them. But we do things like, how are the referrals being made, and what is the team at the right size to meet the needs? How is it financially sustainable? So we have many districts where it's a combination of investment by the district and then using third-party billing. So, your private insurance or your Medicaid. So it doesn't always, everything doesn't have to be fully paid for by the district. So we have some, I have an elementary school that has 3 full-time therapists and a case manager and the medication management that comes to the, to the school, whatever. It depends on the school and the need, and each building is a little separate. You guys know that, all different cultures. And so whatever, that's our goal, to try to make sure the school-based mental health services are matching the need of the community, so access to care for treatment happens.
That is incredible, and such a big deal that you can put somebody who can help manage meds in the school in a qualified, science-informed way.
Yeah, and it's not for every school. It's again based on what the people in the school district really want. I mean, the families and the kids and so we work with them year in and year out to do that. So it sounds like access to care probably is a goal for this group, and
absolutely.
So that's something to think about anyway. So.
Yes, thank you so much.
Tracy Settleberry has been patient with her hand up.
Do you want to sit closer and you can ask questions? You have a nice voice. Share that with us.
Tracy Settleberry, did you want to unmute yourself and ask a question?
Yeah, of course. So my kids are watching Elf in the other room, just to give you guys a heads up. But piggybacking on what Amy said, so not only how do we get the information to these employers and other community members, but also how do we get buy-in from everyone? Like, one of my questions was like depoliticizing this. Like, if we all want the same thing, how do we find a path that we can all follow without the adults getting in an argument about how to save the kids? Yeah. So I don't have an answer for it, and I'm not expecting anyone to be like, oh, I know that one, but just kind of thinking along those lines.
Right.
And if you do, we need to know it now.
I mean, what we're doing tonight, right, is we're coming together, and there's got to be differences among us in this group, right? But our common goal is the mental wellness and well-being of our students, and saying there's got to be more out there. We know there's more out there that's science-based and it's ready to go. And can we partner with people in the community and with the school district to bring that to our kids where they're at, meet them where they're at?
Can I ask that question? Because I didn't we're feeling badly. Like, that's good.
Of course, yeah. No, of course, yeah. So I met with Kelly Granzo. I'm gonna, if anybody knows her correct, yeah, Granzo, and informed her about the task force meeting. Invited her. Dr. Pebbles and I weren't able to touch base on the phone today. Kind of messaged back and forth. Invited him. I know there was a conflicting meeting, it sounds like, at about the same time tonight, that through some of the board members and trustees. Ideally, they're part of this conversation, and we welcome that and encourage that. And then this also formed very quickly, just a couple days ago. And so my goal is I have a meeting that Kelly set with me and Superintendent Prebbles and another one of Kelly's coworkers, and yes, Betsy Ryan, thank you very much. for early January. And I would like to ask if a couple of people here tonight might join me in that meeting and bring kind of a collaboratively what we've accomplished so far and discussed so far on this tonight on this task force.
The other thing that I just want to bring up is that the Anderson Collaborative has been formed. That is the only one that I know is that exists at events like this. Do you know anybody else like that? That has brought together a lot of different elements in the community. So the structure is in place to actually share information in the community in a way that I haven't seen anywhere else.
I agree, and that Anderson Mental Health Collaborative is fully supportive of this group and its activities, and in fact is posting that on their website. Please.
Oh, I have a question. It doesn't really go along with that, but if you don't mind.
Not at all. Do you mind coming up here?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you so much.
Doing great.
Yeah.
I started anyone else had a thought.
Oh, thank you, Megan. I think you can introduce yourself.
Okay, absolutely. Hello. My name is Maya Tully. I'm actually a senior at Turpin, and I am also part of Hope Squad there, as well as like a bunch of other mental health like clubs that we have, like Kind Club, and Student Council gets involved, and Sunny Side Up Club, which is really like, so all I wanted to say was I knew all of my friends that have passed away in the past 3 years. And it has shown so much that in our school and in our district, how much of an impact that it has made on every single one of us. And I think that one of the biggest parts to this is I've been through QPR training like multiple times. I have been through different types of training with teachers. Like I've been teachers and I've had multiple conversations with counselors. I would say that, and I'm not saying that QPR training isn't like a huge deal because I think it's really beneficial. But I also think that we need as a collective to have more care and like more like effort to students like on the emotional connection. And there are great people in our community and there are great people in our schooling that does that. And especially people who run clubs like Hope Squad and Kind Club and all these things. But I think we also need to make it more student voice, because I feel that sometimes the teachers or the administration is very strongly like pro their ideas and don't exactly listen to like what we have to say. I think that being with Hope Squad particularly, I think the idea and the concept is absolutely incredible, and the peer-to-peer is very strong, but it's very difficult because we prioritize like leadership and we prioritize college and we prioritize having a 4.2 GPA on top of being I have friends that are getting 12 varsity letters in 4 years because they're that amazing in like all athletics. And it's hard because I also have friends who will not accept an A-. And seeing the amount of pressure that we have on students is very difficult because we also have on top of that pressure, we have these leadership roles that we're part of, but we don't have voices in them. And so like Hope Squad, for example, concept great, but I would love to see there's like a fine line between being a friend and being a Hope Squad leader. And I wish that we could express the importance of the emotional connection with every single person in our building. I know it's impossible and I know it's super, super out of reach, but I think that the best way for us to accomplish like stressing mental health more is just by showing a genuine effort towards students' needs and listening to their stresses. And I have teachers that like will sit at their desk, and I'm not shaming, and I'm not, they're doing their job, but they will sit at their desk all day long on their computers and will look up just to pass out like notes, or like talk and sit at their desk and like give a lecture. And I understand that that is important because we do need to learn, and we are in school, and we are grateful to have such a good education. But I also would absolutely think it would be a really cool benefit if teachers, administration, and parents understood that mental health starts with emotional connections with people. And so, yeah, that's pretty much what I would have to say, but okay, thanks.
We got a lot of positive response.
Oh, yeah, for speaking.
Got a lot of positive response in the comments too to the students' student voices.
That was Maya, our courageous student in the room. Thank you.
I'm coming to piggyback off of Maya. My senior is at home and she is texting me the things that she feels would be helpful for her. As a student, she just got out of the shower, so she's not doing the Zoom. She said that she feels like if the accommodations weren't just limited to the kids with the IEPs and the 504, they need to turn down the pressure cooker. If you ask for more time on an assignment, that's teaching you to communicate your needs to your teachers and the people that are in charge. That's the real lesson, not the algebra homework you have and don't understand. She also feels like there should not really be a penalty for late work, because you need to be encouraged to turn the work in and to learn it, not to turn it in not understanding it. And the same with like making up tests. The whole goal is for them to learn, not for them to get a certain grade. And she said that if she could go back to like elementary school incentives in high school, these are still kids. They like prize wheels, they like stickers. And those are all ways to develop a good bond with your students and create some sort of a more informal bond. And then if classrooms were accommodating to all types of students, she has a friend in a wheelchair that is not comfortable in their classrooms because it's not maneuverable. And my child has a chronic illness and would kill to have beanbag chairs to sit in instead of having to sit on the desk. She actually sits under a desk in one of her classes, or even just a rug. But she doesn't want to have to carry a yoga ball from class to class. She also says if there's a room that was low light or just a place where you could go to relax, like the spaces, I don't know that we have those. Yes.
It's a MindPeace room.
Yes. And if there was a place where you could go during the school day if you needed a peer tutor or a staff member to help you with your work, so that you could feel like you were a little less underwater. I know that she herself feels the pressure cooker. I mean, she is so freaked out with her college applications because she feels like she doesn't have enough achievements. She was a section leader in the marching band. She's got all of these achievements outside of school, but she doesn't feel like she can stack up against these kids who have all of these clubs. And there's only so much time in the day that she can do these things, and then she's got school on top of it. So I think that turning down the pressure cooker and destigmatizing getting help from the staff at school would be a really good place to start. Because I suggested that maybe we get her into child focus. And she's like, no, I can't do that. Because it feels stigmatizing and alienating. So if we could get rid of that stigma and make kids more willing to take help, I think that would be a huge step. And apparently so does she. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
So I just had somebody message me privately. First of all, Debbie, I am screenshotting all of the comments, so to capture them all, so we will have them, that everybody's in the chat room, and so that people can see it. But Tracy had said, like, is there a way to kind of, like, for us as adults to be vulnerable and let people know, like, how we got here and why we're here and why we're invested in this. So, and I know some of you probably know my story, and some of you in chat definitely know my story, but when I was 15, one of my best friends took his own life in reaction to being afraid that his dad was going to get mad at him for wrecking the car on the way home from a basketball game. It was the first funeral I ever went to. And like 5 months later, I had my first suicide attempt. I've had 2 since. I did not get over the teen angst that they said I had when I was 16. And when I was 27, I started therapy and medication for bipolar and panic disorder. So I know what it is like to bury a friend. I know what it's like to be a teenager that's like, I'm done, I quit life, I can't do it anymore. I know it's like to be an adult that's, I'm done, I quit life, I can't do it anymore. And my graduate had 3 suicide attempts while he was at Anderson, and no one knew. No one. So Tracy, that just, I think I agree, Tracy, it would just be helpful for people to know, like, hey, why is this a passion for you? I definitely hear stories of, whether I'm a current student or a former student, or I'm a teacher or social worker, like those are all fantastic voices to have. And I think it's, super beneficial even for us adults to get really vulnerable and transparent about who we are. I've had lots of private conversations with people in that arena of, I could never, it's this, just chatting with a mom on Facebook Messenger the other day of it being this secret society because we don't want to be the parent that has issues ourselves or have kids that are struggling because, stigma is all carried. So Tracy, I appreciate you asking people to be vulnerable. I think it's super important for us to kind of let our guards down too.
Amy, you're getting a lot of love in the room. Thank you so much for sharing your very personal story with us. And that is the type of thing that absolutely breaks apart stigma in our community. Thank you.
My daughter just trying to get me one more thought. She gave me an example that I think is really important to know about, and this did actually happen to her last year. With the guidance counselors at Anderson, one of her friends wanted to drop AP chemistry because she was underwater. My child actually also went through the same thing with the same class. Her guidance counselor said no and wouldn't let them. And so her friend had to struggle through that class and take a grade that they were not comfortable with for another 2 months before the guidance counselor would let the friend drop the class. And my student had the same situation last year doing virtual school at home. She was over her head. She took 5 AP classes last year because she felt like that's what she wanted to do. We tried to talk her into just 1, and she said, no, I'll do 5. And it was a struggle, and she didn't get much help. And when she asked to adjust the difficulty of her schedule, she was met with a no. She wound up taking an incomplete last year in a couple of classes because she just couldn't keep up. So if we could get the guidance counselors to back off of the pressure of the college application process and guide them to where they can actually thrive, I think that would be super helpful.
Okay, it's another action item that we can take on as a task force. And that's another angle I don't know if we talked about tonight. We have, many people have, but thinking about what specific kind of partnerships we might build with the school to say, here's where our young people are pointing out sources of potential stress or vulnerability, and how can we be creative or flexible to take the pressure off, do things to really relieve what might be exacerbating or what is likely exacerbating some mental health symptoms.
When the student reaches out for help because they're overwhelmed, help them. Don't tell them they have to suck it up.
Yeah, absolutely.
That also makes me want to ask if there are other areas we're not thinking about in terms of where that pressure comes from. Because I heard you say you wanted to take 5 LSAT classes, you suggested maybe not, but she went forward anyway, and I think about my son's high school schedule, and when it comes home, I feel like it's kind of a blank slate. And like, we did the John talk last year, and it's like, I'm gonna drop a level science, go up a level history. I actually like felt like we were doing research, reading the course out to even figure all of that out. So I share that only to say, I don't feel like, I know this teachers make recommendations for his courses, but then he could take or leave those. So we made decisions around that. So like at that moment, where's the pressure coming from at that moment? Because it didn't feel like the school was being like, you must take all of these. And as parents, we were like, what do you want to do? But clearly the pressure somewhere I'm feeling this pressure.
I feel like it's the students against each other almost, because in Anderson it's not a secret. Everybody's expected to be perfect. And so while it's not like a written law that you have to be in the greatest school and you have to achieve at your highest achievement, but it is what it is. Everybody expects you to be up here, even if you feel like you can't mentally be up there. It's not any specific person being like, you need to take 5 AP classes. It's just the environment and culture that we have cultivated. Thank you. And
So,
maybe that's
So our MindPeace in 1 and 5 had what we call the Brain Health Network. And it is so MindPeace in 1 and 5 have what we call the Brain Health Network. What's happening? And we have done quite a bit of research about what is causing the mental health issues with our kids. We've done the research for 2 years now. And what we have found is that the pressure is coming from themselves. It's an internal thing to be perfect, to stack up, and it's coming from society. It's coming from all of us as a society that's what we expect from the kids. And so how do we start to break that cycle? That's what we're actually looking at right now. We're going to start a pilot that we're going to start in January. That's about changing mindsets. So doing some DBT work, looking at that maladaptive perfectionism, and how do we start to change those mindsets in kids? But it's also a community event. It has to be a community project. So we're calling it Changing Hearts and Minds. I mean, it has to be all of us that are looking at the pressure that we're putting on our kids, and how do we start to break that down, because as their brains are not in the point where they can take what we're asking of them. And that's why we're seeing so much mental health issues. So, I think that that's another opportunity for this school district to be a part of that. We're working with a doctor out of St. Louis who has done extensive work in this area. He will be the person that's actually doing that training with the kids starting in January. So, in children, yes. So.
And I know I've had several conversations with kids in the community, because they think that they have to, like I said, they have to go to these huge, well-known schools to be able to do something with their life. I went to Muskingum University. It's 3 hours away. 1,200 people go there. And ended up coming back here to my master's from UC. And nobody cares. Nobody cares when you're an adult where you went to school. You end up in the same spot. You end up where you're supposed to be. But they don't understand that. They think that they need to go to Harvard to be something.
Well, we also did a book study last year. It's called Where You Go Is Not Who You'll Be. And it's all about that. It's exactly that. They looked at all kinds of people that were very successful, and where did they go to school, and it makes no difference. We're studying for
Hey.
We did that at school, so we did it at the Brain Health Network. So high school.
Hey.
We did it for the adults.
Sorry to interrupt. I wanted to ask Maya a question really quick.
Sure.
Just because
Maya,
this whole,
Maya? No. Hold on, she's gonna come forward.
yeah, perfect.
Hello.
We look really different when we're not in green shirts running around Target like crazy people, don't we? Oh, yeah.
I knew I recognized you.
I look a little bit different, don't I? Anyway, so I wanted to ask you, just because this is a question that I have had. Have you, first of all, just total transparency, how many AP classes are you taking like this year?
This year, AP, I think I'm taking 3.
Okay.
Last year I took 5.
So did,
Yeah.
and awesome to take 5 APs, but did like, at any point when you were scheduling those APs, did say a school counselor say, you know, hey, I know you do sport, or I know you're in all these clubs, like, you know, let's look at what you might want to do in life. And do you need to take 5? Can you just take 3 that are kind of concentrated in an area? Like, I'm just curious if anybody stepped in at any point and said, you know, is 5 too much of a load? Is that difficult for you? And there are kids that obviously can totally handle that. But I was just curious if at any point somebody said maybe 5 APs is a big course load, if you're in addition trying to do things like Kind Club and Sunny Side Up, like all of those other things that, because I know you have this like huge heart for. So it's just a curiosity question.
Honestly, that's a really good question, because going into freshman year, no direction whatsoever, expected to take AP classes in like as much as I could. Like, you know, you have this, like, people tell you, well, maybe you can graduate earlier, you can like get credits for college, it's cheaper. So I was like, okay, you know what, I'll just try that. So then freshman year, I have this super hard work overload. Sophomore year, I keep doing it because I was like, you know what, nobody's giving me any direction. And then junior year was really rough for me. Just mental wise, just was not very strong. I was going through a lot of situational depression and anxiety, and I just absolutely like hit this like low where I couldn't try. Like I couldn't, on top of all the pressures that I had already, like I couldn't try. And the AP definitely did not help at all. But I also found during that time that I really wanted to major in journalism. And so once I figured that out, I also hit this point where I was like, why am I trying so hard? I was like, why am I trying like I have a 4.2 GPA. Why am I trying this hard to go to a college that I could probably get in with iffy-ish grades and iffy-ish pressures on me, like clubs? So I talked to my counselor and I was like, I'm not trying to go above and beyond senior year. Like, I'm not trying to. I feel that I'm going to be fine with whatever I do because I know that I'm going to go into this. So lead me to the classes that will help me get there. And he did that. And he was like, he also knew me, which was really cool. But he was like, look, Tully, like, you don't need to take AP macro. Like, you're not good at math anyways. I was like, thank you. I appreciate that. So I guess I did have a little bit of sense of direction with that. I also had really great supportive parents that like were like, Maya, you don't have to do this and this and this. Like, focus on one thing and do that. So that's really helped this year. Last year, not so much. But it's also really hard when you're in such a low part mentally to like want to like do more and more. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. But yeah.
Totally. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's just that I was just curious.
Of course. I don't know what she said. Okay. Oh yeah, you did.
I said it was good to see you again.
I wanted to share real quick from someone here, just a point of interest. So they shared the Anderson Township bubble I was raised in did not even remotely prepare me for life after high school. And because of that, I've struggled with an eating disorder, anxiety, and depression. What can the schools and community do to prevent this in the future? I wouldn't wish my struggles on anyone.
I would love to get, I love your best wishes and I will ask you this question, but I feel like it's so easy to be nice to figure out how to gather some more information. Like I found myself wondering, we're sharing about the need for more emotional connection. Like I thought about the, what's called offline day at Nagel. And like, I thought about Morgan's suggestion of like, oh, check-ins that she made at the board meeting the other night. But like, this would be, again, the adult thinking, but I feel like holding her heart when I say offline. Yeah. Which makes me think like there was something about that.
I absolutely admire Mrs. Keller who runs the Go Offline Day program. Like, I think I've been a part of it so I went to Nagel for 8th grade, and I've been a part of it ever since. Like, I've helped every year, and I just think those kind of things, and I've even been back to Nagel to talk to students and communicate with them, like, their expectations in high school and how it's not always going to be exactly how you have it envisioned. And but I think Go Offline Day is one of the many really cool things that is really beneficial to connect students to students, and also for everybody to see that we're all one. Like, we all have our battles and we all are fighting different ones too. And I think it's just really beneficial for us to just take a step back and accept reality that it's not perfect, like life isn't perfect, Nagel is not perfect, elementary school is not perfect. And it's just really vulnerable to see how strong everybody is and how far each person's journey like is, because everybody's different. So I love the offline days for that reason.
Is it just one a year? That's what I was gonna say.
I'm sorry, is it just one per year? Yes, one per year.
I know, it's not how it works.
Unfortunately, we are not, I don't think we're going to be able to do it this year. It might be.
The other thing, when you think about trying to understand multiple student perspectives, is one of the things that we do at One in Five is we do a climate survey that Nancy talked about. So we send out a survey to all students, all parents, all staff. So you can collect that collective understanding and really know what everybody's really feeling and looking at, really from a really specific mental health. From a really specific mental health perspective, not just student connectedness, but rather what are the beliefs of the parents around mental health and mental illness? What are the beliefs around between the students? What does the environment in the school feel like? And then how do parents perceive it? And then what are staff? Right? We can't just say staff need to do this, staff needs to do that. I was a teacher and it's really hard. Right? I was a teacher at Turpin, and there's a lot. They're trying so hard, as are the Anderson teachers, because we don't get into education because we hate people. And if you did, you really got out fast. But right, so everyone cares and wants to do the best, but we need to really find out where are we starting before we can even figure out where are we going to go. So I encourage that to be kind of maybe look at it and see how, as the task force collaborative, maybe you can see if that's a good fit. Because we got to know. I love the voices in the room and the voices. I didn't get to read the comments though. I love reading comments. But really be able to see what that looks like from that space. But then to Amy's point, how do we engage the community as well? Yeah. And I think that there's some, there could be some really great ideas. And just part of it means we need the people in the buildings to invite their friends. Because the best way we change beliefs and values and behaviors is through relationships. Programs don't change people, relationships do. And so how do we invite people together to create a culture change? Because that's really what I'm hearing, is there's this culture that we want to shift in a positive way. And we want to take the pressures off but still having the results we want, right? And those two can coexist. It's not either or. And so I'll get off my soapbox now.
So I just want to add to what Erin said. I mean, there are a community of people that are doing this work, that have been doing this work for a while, that we can learn from. I always talk about Marymount because Marymount has really been made this a major priority for about 7 years now. We talk about doing having a day where you get to check out. Every week they have what they call Warriors Beyond. And it is where the kids are allowed to pick something that brings them joy, and they do it every week. And so they're testing out all kinds of different things that they never really have the opportunity to do. Maybe they're going to do photography. Maybe they're going to do basket weaving. Maybe they're going to do, I don't know, but
Cross stitch is making a comeback.
but they get the opportunity to actually check out of their schoolwork every single week to do an activity that they love. And that's one thing that we really learned on that, on doing the research is that the kids have no time for joy. They are so overscheduled. They're not sleeping. And there's very little joy in their life. So how do we bring that joy back? How do we incorporate that into what they get on a daily, weekly basis? It's really, really important.
Nancy, I'll follow up on that really quick. When I was the PTO president at Nagel, so my now junior's 8th grade year, we literally implemented recess at Nagel once a month. And we had parents that came in and volunteered, and we had everything from sidewalk talk to kickball to footballs, to kids just hanging outside. And all of our teachers said that it was like a game changer because, you know, kids got some fresh air and outside, and they weren't on their phones. They were, you know, acting like they were in the 5th and 6th grade again. You know, and I don't know what I don't even know if Nagel has continued it since I have been gone. And I don't, you know, necessarily know what recess, quote unquote, in a high school setting would look like, but, you know, even just encouraging teachers to utilize outdoor spaces just to get out of a classroom and some fresh air, might be simple things that, you know, do to give kids a break from, you know, to someone said something about, you know, needing a special chair, that like that might just be, you know, a better learning environment as a break every once in a while.
Thank you, Amy. So noticing the time, and we have, I think, one more question or one more comment. And then we'll kind of come back together to group all things up.
Yeah, so I have a child in 3 of our school buildings, and I am so grateful for everyone for sharing their expertise and their personal stories. I mean, it's just so important. And these really great work that's being done around the community, and these big kind of concepts. But I want to kind of just really narrow it down real practical for a minute. And that's around the idea of, somebody mentioned earlier, like, what are the protocols? And, you know, to reiterate the comment that was made earlier, what is the protocol if a student is really struggling, finds themselves really struggling during the day? All of a sudden they're at school and they know they're not okay. Do they know what they're supposed to do? I have no idea what they're supposed to do. And so that just feels like that's something that the kids need to know, and the parents need to know what they're told they're supposed to do. And then to take it in a slightly different direction, what if it's outside of the school day? So, and what if it's either you as a kid for your own self, or if you find out something you're worried about for another kid? We had a situation happen where one of my students saw on social media or some way like that, a comment that another student was making that was very concerning for that student's own safety. And thank goodness my student told me, my kid told me, but we didn't know who the kid was. We didn't recognize the last name. It wasn't a neighbor. It wasn't somebody I knew, and it was, 9:30 at night. And I was like, what? I should know what I'm supposed to do. I have no idea. This wasn't a 911 situation, but like, I still couldn't go to bed. We should know I'm the grown up and I don't really know what to do. And fortunately we were able to, knew enough sort of people who knew somebody who did have a counselor, one of the school counselors' contact information. And so the situation was passed on to the appropriate people who could take care of it. That was what our job was at the time. But I didn't feel like I felt like we were only lucky that we were able to get the information to the right person. And that just, to me, identified a gap. And I'm thinking I'm probably not the only parent. So since then, and partly thank you to the some of our school counselors and administrators who have been sending out information just in the recent weeks, with the suicide prevention hotline and other numbers. I'm certainly going to put those numbers in my kids' phones and that kind of thing. But I think there's something missing that's a little bit closer to home. If my kid sees something concerning about another kid, he's not going to call a suicide prevention hotline. I mean, what's something a little bit more concrete and closer to home for our community?
You raise a really good point, because some of this wasn't a question we had before social media, right? Like, that's where our kids are seeing a lot of this. So it's late at night and it's with people we don't know, which would be a different scenario from when I was growing up and my parents knew the people I knew because they had driven me there, and those are the only people I was. Do you know what I mean? It's kind of a newfound situation a little bit, needing to figure out what those resources.
So that just seems like it just is a parent with zero expertise in the space. It feels like an area for potential, if you think of like task lists or something, that seems like there might be an actionable item around that.
It's such a good point. And the nice thing is that if you belong to the network, other schools already have those protocols in place and we can learn from them, so we don't have to reinvent the wheel or figure it out. And that's the cool thing about sharing and being part of the community. I'm so glad that you brought that up, because I think it's really important to get to the highest risk things first, maybe, and then move down to the bigger impact. But such a great point.
You can also call, like the Hamilton County Sheriff's non-emergency line, and they can do that.
That's a good point. That's a good point.
Obviously, you didn't know that kids have that. You know, like, but
Right.
we are, that is also a good thing about it, is everybody knows everybody, so somebody will know.
So one thing is on the check, it takes them a while to get to their house. Like it takes them.
It would be a lot easier for them.
And it's that whole later.
Yes.
Well, and I mean,
It's an option.
it's an option, though. It's a really important thing. It's a really important thing to keep in mind. Yeah.
To wrap this up, this is an amazing conversation. I'd like to continue it all night, but I have to be respectful of everybody's time too. So with, can you let me know your name? Tara. So Tara was the parent that just spoke and used the term gap. So that is a trigger term, or in a good way, a positive way, that I've also heard Forest Hills School District Wellness Committee members use, is they first have to identify and get a foundation around there's a gap in what they already, services they already present. So with the task force, I think the way that we kind of come alongside the district and at the table at the district is to say, hey, we have these gaps that are urgent and are focused on our student safety. With what we covered tonight, I believe Rachel Baker has been taking notes. I know several of you have been taking notes. We are going to disseminate those notes out to our group via email and on our webpage. Also with that meeting that I have with some of the Forest Hills School District administrators, I'd like to have a couple of people join me at that meeting, ideally a student, a parent, and then also some of our organizations ready to go, like 1 in 5 and MindPeace. So I will be in touch with you all if there are certain ones of you that are willing to volunteer or to do that and to step forward and communicate some of the overall task force messages we've gathered tonight. That would be fantastic. And if you're interested in that, you can reach me, I think, on the site, on Facebook, email, etc. As a reminder, we're going to post the QPR link to sign up for question, persuade, refer training. And those are really groups that are reserved for us in the Anderson community. And we'll be starting early as next week at night.
There were a lot of questions in the chat. How do you want to go about getting to any of those questions?
That is a great question about the questions. So for those of you who have questions in the chat, I'm assuming we can get those.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so we'll have access to get those on the chat, and then those will be part of an agenda for our next task force meeting. Kind of my thoughts are, again, to email out, I'll probably do a quick survey like we did before and asked around what time or days work best for people and about what frequency that we can meet as a task force to continue to keep this momentum going. And so with those questions, if any of them are fairly urgent in nature, please highlight that or let me know or contact me personally, and I will get you in contact with the expert person because that obviously may not be me. Thank you guys so much for your time, your effort, your commitment, your love for this district and our students. I wish you a good evening and a happy holiday, and thank you for joining us.